Hey guys, this is Tom, and we're going to be doing our first M12 Sealed 64-man flight. So we should be starting soon for deck building. Okay, here we are. This is our sealed pool, and quickly we're just going to go ahead and look at some of the strongest cards in each color just to see kind of what we have. So it looks like in white we have some very nice early game cards. We've got an Oblivion Ring, we have a Lawkeeper, we have Day of Judgment, which is quite good. The Assault Griffin. Divine Favor is a fine card. Arbalest Elite. So we really have a pretty solid set of white cards here. And then what I like to do is I like to sort of go through each color and then bring it down here with the cards that I think are going to be decent, and then we can really start to find out sort of what decks we could potentially put together. Okay, so in blue we have Merfolk Looter, Azure Mage. Let's see what else here. Frost Breath can be quite good, especially in a very aggressive deck. We've got Fleetwing, Chasm Drake, Jace's Archivist, which is actually just a fine card, can be very game-changing. Phantasmal Bear. So it looks like so far the blue is just fine also. Hopefully we're going to find some nice bombs here. In black we have, let's see, 2 Doomblades, which is always nice to see. Most likely we are going to be playing black in some manner, whether it's just a splash for Doomblades or as part of our main colors. And I think that typically in a sealed pool, kind of what you're looking for is, first of all, a strong creature base, just because a lot of these games basically you're not looking at the same level of power as like a draft deck. What you're considered with most is making sure that you have a good creature curve and that you're able to actually play out a decent number of threats. So let's see here. Mana Barbs is an interesting card. It's potentially very good in a aggressive deck, and I'm not sure if we're going to have that, but it's always an option. Okay, so we've got Shock. So we have some very decent red cards as well. Like we've got Shock, Outrage. We don't have an Incinerate, unfortunately, but Goblin Warpaint is fine. Let's see here. And then for green, we've got Llanowar Elves. Titanic Growth is fine. We've got a Crocodile, 2 Sacred Wolves, Giant Spider, Greater Basilisk. We do have Arachnus Spinner, which is extremely good if you have the Arachnus Web to go and search for. And we have a Primeval Titan, so we definitely made some money on the sealed pool here, which is great. Okay, so let's see what we've got. The artifacts are actually fine. I haven't gotten a chance to play with Throne of Empires before, but I feel like it could be a very good card in sealed, just because once again the power level is going to be quite a bit lower. So let's see here. Okay, and then we've got Drifting Shade and Smallpox. So I mean, we really have a decent set of cards here. We don't really have enough goblins to use Goblin Grenade. I mean, we have 3 goblins, which is not enough. So let's take a look. Okay, so we've got Primeval Titan, which is definitely a card we want to play with, if we can. We have Day of Judgment, which is also quite good. But when we're looking at our creatures, let's see. So we have a decent spread of red creatures. I mean, we have the Gorehorn Minotaur, we have the Blood Ogre, we have the Stormblood Berserker, we have the Fireslinger to turn it on, and then we have, a decent number of removal. We have, Chandra's Outrage, we have Shock, which is good, but the white, we have 2 Stormfront Pegasus, 3 Warhorse, the Assault Griffin, the Lawkeeper. So white is much more of a early game, and we've got the Oblivion Ring and the Day of Judgment. So in terms of removal, I mean, Day of Judgment and Oblivion Ring is better than Shock and Chandra's Outrage. But I mean, in black we have, well, let's see, we have Reassembling Skeleton, Bloodseeker Onyx Mage, Warpath Ghoul. So the creatures in black are fairly weak. We don't really have, any serious kind of game enders in black. We do have 2 Doomblades. So what my natural feeling is here is that we're going to go ahead and probably splash black for the Doomblades. So if we take out the black, then we're looking at, let's see here, because I mean the creature base just is not that strong in black, and we're not super aggressive because we don't have all the early game cards we'd need for like a red-black shell. Frankly, the white is just better for the early game. What we could do is we could set up like a red-white deck with Tunneler, Berserker, all the Warhorses, but the Warhorses are so color intensive that I'm not sure that's going to be the best deck for us. I mean, we have the Blood Ogre and the Minotaurs to turn on, so it could be a decent shell. And then in blue, we have a decent number of good blue cards. I mean, we have the Azure Mage, we have the Aether Adept, we have the Archivist, the Skywinder Drake, the Chasm Drake, the Fleetwing, the Frost Breath. But once again, I think that potentially the overall power level of blue is just not as high as the white, for instance. So let's see here. If we take out the red, not sold on the red right now. I mean, we could splash like a Shock, but it's going to be much more difficult to splash a Chandra's Outrage. Then we'd be looking at potentially like a green-white, or like a blue-green. And I think with this setup here, I mean, because we want to play like Arachnus Spinner, even without the Aura is still a very good card. It's a 5/7 reach. Very few flyers get past it. The Primeval Titan is, I mean, it's a 6/6 trample for 6 that thins your deck in a matter of turns. Very powerful effect. So I think what it really comes down to is which color do we want to pair with green here. Green does not have a lot going on early game here, and like I said, I think that the white is a very good sort of early transition into the green. Unfortunately, we don't have any rampant growth, so we can't easily search out the Doomblades or the mana to play them. But if we were to play like blue, green, black, we could potentially like use the Azure Mage and the Merfolk Looter to get there. To make sure that we draw into the mana that we need. And then Alluring Siren does pair very well with like the Arachnus Spinner and the Primeval Titan. But I think this deck really just wants Day of Judgment. I mean, it's a very powerful card, and I think that overall we're going to gain more from the white-green as opposed to the blue-green. We could look at doing like a blue-white, which honestly would not be the worst deck. I just don't think it has the same power level. I mean, because if we resolve a Titan, you know, it's going to be very difficult to lose at that point. I mean, it's not as powerful as like Inferno Titan or Grave Titan, for instance, but it's still a Titan, and I think it, you know, it needs to be respected in that sense. Also, I mean, if we just like Day of Judgment and then play a Titan, we're in a very good spot. So let's go ahead and take a look at the white-green Splashing Black for Doomblade. And here we have, okay, so do we have any artifacts that we want to really play for sure? One other thing is that Naturalize is actually quite decent in Sealed usually. So we may end up maining that, although we may just board it. Okay, so we definitely want the Manolith. Now, the Sacred Wolves, I'm not sure we have a lot to really... I mean, we can put like a greatsword on them, but we only have Divine Favor to really make them a little bit better. So I'm not sure that we really... that they're really that good in this deck. Oromancer is great. It gets back Oblivion Ring, for whatever reason if they get rid of it, or Divine Favor. And then we have... I really like the War Horses and the Stormfront Pegasus. It's a nice sort of early defensive card before we can get going with some of our later drops. So if we move out the Sacred Wolves for the moment, then we, you know, and one other card which is sort of nice is if we use the Greatsword on like the War Horses, it turns them into a legitimate threat. Not sure that Crown of Empires is going to be what we want to do with this deck. We are looking at, you know, we have a tapper already, and I think that something like Swiftfoot Boots might be better for us. Titanic Growth is fine, but we're not super aggressive, so I'm not sold on it. Okay. So now we're down to 27 cards. Let's see. I think I like Rock Egg more than Stonehorn Dignitary. You know, basically it helps buy a little bit more time. And it gives us a more legitimate threat if they kill it. And then, let's see here. Like, we don't need to necessarily play Oromancer and Divine Favor. We could just play the Oblivion Ring, but... And then, like, side into Oromancer if we see, like, enchantment removal. Let's see here. Crocodile is a good hedge in case we're playing up against blue. And actually, you know, I'm fine with that because I don't think that Divine Favor is as good for this deck as, say, for instance, Greatsword. I think Greatsword does more for it. You know, we have a 3/5, we have a couple 2/3s. Greatsword is great on, like, a Pegasus, for instance. You can even put on a Rock Egg for the defense. And then Swiftfoot Boots, I think, has a pretty good place in this deck also, just because if we can put a Swiftfoot Boots, you know, like on a Titan, for instance, I mean, it just gets out of control rather quickly. So I think that, you know, we've got a pretty healthy creature count here. I really want to try out Throne. I want to see how good it can be. So I think that we need to cut one more card. This deck may not need the Swiftfoot Boots, but I think that Swiftfoot Boots actually plays a pretty important role here.